The PlayStation 2. Total domination in every sense of the word. This architecturally brutal black box broke ground throughout its whole lifespan and took the precedent set by its older sibling to unattainable heights. Still to this day, it is the highest selling gaming console of all time, and it's not really close. Its design had no shame, its gaming library endless, and the innovative paths and doorways it opened cemented it on top of the gaming food chain. With the PS2 being the golden age of gaming, it only makes sense to trawl through its back catalogue at some of its very best that truly deserve a 4K facelift. With games like Resident Evil 4, Beyond Good and Evil and Psychonauts apparently all confirmed on the way, don't expect to see them on this list. Here are an array of classics and gems that we at Northern Undead Asylum would like to see. Number 10. Fahrenheit Indigo Prophecy. Before David Cage became the laughingstock of the industry, then the hero, back to the laughingstock, to finally land as a hero again after recent success with Detroit Become Human, he started in humble beginnings with Fahrenheit, or Indigo Prophecy as it's known in America. Truth be told, it was actually his second game, but for the purpose of this monologue, Fahrenheit is an action-adventure third or first-person game set in New York which puts you in the shoes of a very odd bedfellow named Lucas. He is supernaturally interfered with, which causes him to commit a horrible murder in a diner restroom. In classic David Cage form, every decision you make affects the story and makes for a great gaming experience in a what happens next scenario. Throughout the game, you're tasked with figuring out what exactly happened in that diner, and by the end of the game, you're questioning your sanity as everything goes batshit crazy. Half conspiracy theory, half fantasy melting pot, the game is not without its issues, particularly in the plot, but with those lessons learnt from Heavy Rain and Detroit Become Human, I'd without doubt cherish a fresh cut of this bonkers romper stomper in the hands of Quantic Dream. Number 9. Devil May Cry. In 2018, Capcom proved this IP has more than life on modern consoles. Devil May Cry 5 was a gothic adrenaline ride and combat paracon that breathed new life into a previous console classic. The conclusion? Get the RE engine fired up and return to Dante and Virgil's first outing. Although starting with Devil May Cry 3 wouldn't be too out there, it is a prequel and the best in the series, I'd happily settle with the OG. Capcom have already had rave success bringing the Resident Evil franchise to new terrifying heights, so it isn't too out of turn to request to see Munda sent back to the demon world by our white-haired, red leather-wearing, bad boy devil-hunting Dante. Mallet Island could even invite a loose open world setting, but following the formula of the first game wouldn't be a bad business decision. Devil May Cry had an overall slower and darker tone to it. I won't bore you by referencing what it started life as, but the tone is what made this title a standout for me. The combat wasn't what we know the series for today, but of course 4 titles later they had mastered that, bagged it and sent it to the masses. Some people believe these games are up to scratch and therefore don't require remakes, but to them I say poo poo to you, sire. Give me 60 frames of smashed Demon Skull any day of the week. Number 8. Grand Theft Auto Vice City. I truly believe I could not do a PlayStation 2 remake request without asking for the game that so many others wish they were. Enough controversy to keel over several Republican politicians, and an aura of cool normally only reserved for the rock stars such as Shane McGowan and Jim Morrison, Grand Theft Auto Vice City captured a period of time in the most glorious of fashions, breathing 1980s Miami into the gaming populace. It had an Hollywood-esque script and plotline, eccentric professional voice acting, and it all rounded up in a GTA's play God freedom of choice open world that let you live out your wildest fantasies. As proven over the years, most teenagers' in-game fantasy is to go on a 5-star tank rampage being chased by police helicopters and the local army. I always loved the fact that Grand Theft Auto prompted a wilder side of life in its missions, but in terms of the open world it was completely up to you. I always took it as serious as I could, and by GTA 4 I was stopping at red lights while the dialogue played out over the greatest radio stations ever assembled. The depth the developers went to over something as miscellaneous as the radio stations are precisely what makes these games generational icons. Every facet of the world has been built to suit the narrative, and after seeing what Rockstar has managed with current gen San Andreas, we can only dream of its southern eastern state counterpart. If only Rockstar can stop counting its GTA Online money for one moment, we might see a resurgence in game developing. Number 7. Fatal Frame. Between the juggernauts of horror that are Resident Evil and Silent Hill, other survival horror titles fell to the wayside of obscurity and cult status. Fatal Frame for the last 20 years has refused to be that game. Its original title, released in 2001, was an experimental beast. More importantly, it claimed to be based on a true story. Ooh, scary. The game introduces you to Miku, a young woman with a talent akin to Derek Akora. Her brother has disappeared and, like all sensible, selfish little turds, hides himself away in a haunted mansion. Armed with nothing but a flashlight, female Derek Akora explores the mansion in search of said missing brother. Eventually she stumbles upon a camera obscura and goes to town shooting spiritual soft porn shots for Naked Ghost Weekly. As the game suggests, these shots of the ghosts are quite damaging for them, sending them back to the Ouija board that selfish little turd brother probably drew out. Games such as Outlast have carried on a similar tradition, with claustrophobic and barely visible surroundings playing the main fear factor. A modern day telling of Fatal Frame has all the ingredients to become a staple spoiler of the undies. It just needs that theoretical kick up the arse. Number 6. PsyOps: The Mindgate Conspiracy. PsyOps: The Mindgate Conspiracy is a third-person shooter from Midway Games. It has you play as Nick Scryer, a psychic soldier who has had his memory wiped in order to become the GOAT at making people do poo-poos with telekinesis. Nick, the Psy operative, looks like a thrown-away base model for Shepard out of the Mass Effect series, and his unfortunate memory wipe means he is more than game to take on the terrorist organisation known as the Movement. Along with telekinesis, he has the ability to use mind control and pyrokinesis. Even in 2004, the game's locations gave a lot to play with in terms of using the environment. Scryer can't just use his powers willy-nilly though, no. He can perform a mind drain by sneaking up on enemies and juicing them for all they're worth. Dirty bugger. The story wasn't its greatest strength, but both the combat and the environment give it great value in the remake market. Remedy's 2019 hit Control clearly takes inspiration from PsyOps, and look how that turned out. It's a hit. It's a box office hit. This game's strength was in its variety of combat. Combining this with a glossed over suitable story would make this trip down memory lane a fantastical one. Number 5. The Getaway. Team Soho, who eventually became Team Bondi, are unfortunately no more. In the wake of their implosion, they left us LA Noire, a 1930s detective motion capture accusation simulator. But prior to this, they developed a London-based crime drama called The Getaway. As an English person, it was a dream come true to hear a gangster crime game had been made in a replicated design of Piccadilly Circus. With all the bravado of a coked up Danny Dyer swinging a copy of Football Factory and a machete and an East End boozer.
Oh fucking hell mate, what have I done?
The Getaway put you in the suit of Mark Hammond, an ex-bank robber who has chosen to leave his life of crime behind. Within 10 seconds, his wife has been murdered and his son kidnapped by a Bethnal Green thug called Charlie Jolson.
Oh, lovely jubbly.
Charlie blackmails poor old Mark to do his very, very dirty work if he wants to see his son again. Chaos ensues and brings London to its knees in an all-out gang warfare. Juxtaposed to all this lock, stock and two smoking barrels, up-and-coming detective Frank Carter is on the hunt to stop the rot. In terms of gameplay, this was pretty ropey, as using a gun was as easy as playing Buckaroo Pissed. The game doesn't have a traditional road map or mini-map, so to navigate your way round, you follow the indicators on the car you drive. Sometimes worked, others had you driving in circles for hours. The final neat little mechanic was how you healed in the game. Rather than heal items or a health bar, your character would slow down dramatically when shot excessively, and their clothing would be soaked in blood. Not a problem, as leaning against the closest wall and a few deep breaths eradicated your bullet holes and blood-soaked clothing. Take that, Daz. Watch Dogs Legion recently created a dystopian London for all mod cons, but the dream is to get back to a hyper-realised Piccadilly Circus and go and find me mate's house. Number 4, the Fight Night series, EA Sports. Alright, arrest me, bit of a cheaty one this, but we currently have the luxury of experiencing next-gen sports games as football, basketball, baseball, American football, golf, tennis, ice hockey, and of course the UFC. Is it really the greedy boxers stopping this game from resurfacing, or is it the rise to fame pulling power the UFC can now hold? There could be many reasons, but the pain of not fighting Mike Tyson with Tyson Fury is just plain cruel. The rags to riches story incorporated into the character creator game mode was always a highlight of the Fight Nights, taking your cabbage-eared, mash-nosed character all the way to unified champion. There's not much more to say here other than EA, do your thing, you bloodsuckers. Number 3, Time Splitters. We all know Time Splitters 2 is the one, but how can you bring back a franchise without starting at numero 1? Once hailed as PlayStation 2's finest first-person shooter, the time-travelling element of these titles leaves exploration to no ends. A more child-friendly design, if the nostalgia doesn't drown you, it could open up to a whole new generation. Free Radical design are the first-person gods who designed GoldenEye for the 64, but a modern-day Time Splitters could lean more to the Borderlands series. With levels spread all over the world in past and present settings, Time Splitters could even kick a rehashed time-jumping franchise like Assassin's Creed off the genre top spot. The couch co-op of old is destined to be a multiplayer, and this game had the roots of that in its DNA. Number 2, The Warriors. Who knew the hyper-stylised 1979 crime drama would be turned into a masterpiece by a studio known at the time for prostitutes and murder sprees? Well, in fact, the glove couldn't fit any better, with the action-adventure beat-em-up being one of their finest pieces. Not only was the world building, characters and personalities picture perfect, the game came fully licensed with original music and actors taking part. Most of the warriors themselves are playable, with Cleon the leader taking top spot. Rockstar carried over their eccentric style and melted it in with the movie's cartoonish but brutal gang warfare. The journey back to Coney Island plays out on a biblical level, and the poetic and iconic dialogue of the original gave this game cult status. The game follows the same plot as the movie, with Cyrus the Warlord being shot at the beginning, and the blame is thrown at the foot of our heroes. Chaos and brutality is brought to the gang as they spit, kick and punch their way back to Coney Island. The movie, being a cult masterpiece, put a lot of weight on the game to get it right, and of course this was a success of colossal stature. A fully fleshed out remake of this PS2 gem could only knock on the door of Game of the Year territory at the very least. Number 1, The Thing. We have finally reached my number 1 remake request from the PS2 life cycle. A game that I would consider my favourite of the generation. Computer Artworks' 2002 survival horror The Thing is a game that on the surface could be taken for granted, if not for the strong arm collective that hold this game in the regard it deserves. The Thing had all the makings of a survival horror: item gathering, puzzle solving, inventory management and weapon changing. But what makes this game so special is its plot and mechanics. Captain Blake and a team of special forces land at the Antarctic Outpost 31, literally a few hours after the movie ends. It is essentially The Thing 2. They soon discover what they are up against: a shape-shifting other being that can replicate humans or animals and has completely wiped out the previous Alpha team. Communication to the outside world is soon becoming impossible, and what's worse is it could have already latched on to one of the new crew members and wreaking havoc already. Computer Artworks used the theme of the movie and ran with it, creating paranoia, tension and fear between every member, and a level of trust so degenerate that one wrong move could turn into a bloodbath. Captain Blake, the playable protagonist, takes charge of a small team that he uses to navigate the outpost. At any one time you can have a soldier, medic or an engineer NPC along the ride with you. Each member has a specific duty that helps you across the missions. In inventory management, you can control what you keep and what you pass on to your crew members. All NPCs have a trust and stress meter, which creates for some interesting scenarios. Deny giving a weapon to one of your crew, they will immediately distrust you, forcing you to take the iconic blood test. Enter a room of horrors after the thing has done a Picasso in blood, and a crew member can lose their sanity and begin throwing up, crying in the fetal position, or firing their gun blindly. Nothing a taser or an adrenaline shot can't fix. For anyone who has not seen the movie, which I am mortified if you fall in that category, will experience this setting well enough. Fan service like McCready's disappearance adds a whole new level of intrigue for die-hard thingists, but the game being non-canonical means it won't affect your enjoyment or claustrophobia. This game storms into your consciousness with its interesting plot, well-built story, clever AI and innovative game mechanics, and of course makes for prime Remake Request. The PS2 produced some stellar titles, giving developers new canvases to work on and push the boundaries of technology. Now we have more to play with, and it's a game like The Thing that deserves nothing more than a modern day retelling. Word was that Computer Artworks was shut down in pre-production of a sequel to this game, leaving the IP with no functional developer. If any development team was to get their hands on this game, who would you like to see take the helm? I honestly couldn't care less as long as they do the game justice. This has been Wilson Rabello with the PlayStation 2 Remake Requests. For more videos, articles and news, go to Northern Undead Asylum on all platforms.